Ladies and gentlemen, we live in an age where pride has been rebranded as self-love, arrogance has been baptized as confidence, and manipulation has been disguised as influence. The narcissist thrives in such an environment, for the soil of our culture has been tilled and prepared for their poisonous seeds. But beneath the charm, beneath the practiced smile, lies a fragile soul bound by insecurity and driven by an insatiable hunger for validation. They crave the spotlight, they demand your energy, and they build their kingdoms on the backs of those too weary or too unaware to resist. Yet here is the irony: the very things they seek are the very things that can destroy them. The narcissist is not invincible. In fact, they are among the most miserable of creatures, for their well-being depends entirely on the reactions of others. If you've ever crossed paths with one, you know the suffocating weight of their control, the exhausting drain of their presence, and the subtle way they twist truth into weapons. Tonight, we'll expose their weakness. We'll uncover 6 things that strip away their power, frustrate their schemes, and make them face the one thing they fear most: irrelevance. 1. They hate being ignored. Silence starves their ego. They hate being ignored because attention is the air they breathe. To a narcissist, every interaction is an opportunity to feed their ego, to reinforce the image they have so carefully constructed of themselves. The smirk, the charm, the dramatic stories they weave, it's all bait designed to capture your eyes, your ears, and ultimately your energy. Without your response, without your nodding approval, or even your defensive protest, their world begins to collapse. Silence to them is not neutral, it is devastating. Ignoring a narcissist is like cutting off the oxygen supply to a fire. It suffocates what once burned so brightly. Consider how they thrive on conflict. Even your anger is valuable to them because it proves they still have control. They know how to push buttons, how to provoke, and how to leave you drained while they walk away satisfied. But what happens when their manipulation meets a wall of silence? What happens when their game falls flat because you refuse to play? They unravel. The very energy they demand becomes unavailable, and they are forced to face the hollowness they have been trying to mask. This is not easy because everything in you will want to respond. When someone slanders you, you want to defend yourself. When someone provokes you, you want to fight back. But remember, your reaction is their reward. If you want to strip a narcissist of their power, you must master the discipline of disengagement. That does not mean passivity or cowardice. It means wisdom. It means you are no longer offering your life as a stage for their drama. You refuse to fuel their narrative. Instead, you let silence do the work. And make no mistake, silence speaks louder than 1,000 arguments. Think of how often Jesus himself stood silent before his accusers. The Pharisees wanted him to react, to defend, to lash back. Yet there is power in refusing to give the enemy what he craves. A narcissist, in the same way, cannot stand to be met with calm indifference. They want chaos, because in chaos they can reign. But when you withdraw the gift of your attention, you dismantle their throne. Ignoring does not mean you lack discernment. It means you are choosing to invest your energy in what matters rather than what manipulates. It means their insults fall flat, their boasts echo into emptiness, and their attempts to dominate the conversation land in silence. At first, they may double down, becoming louder, more dramatic, more insistent. That is the tantrum of a starving ego. But if you remain steadfast, their tactics lose power, and they are left exposed. There is a kind of holy discipline in learning to ignore. It is not indifference to justice, but it is a refusal to be baited. It is a recognition that some battles are not worth fighting because the battlefield itself is a trap. A narcissist wants you to exhaust yourself, to be pulled into endless cycles of defense and explanation. When you rise above that, when you quietly refuse the invitation, you force them to face the uncomfortable reality that without an audience, they are nothing more than noise. And here is the secret. They know it. Deep down, beneath their arrogance and pride, lies the gnawing fear that they are irrelevant. Ignoring them makes that fear come alive. It is not your rage that wounds them. It is your silence. It is not your confrontation that unravels them. It is your calm refusal to acknowledge their performance. In doing so, you reclaim your strength, you protect your peace, and you remind them that they do not control you. 2. They hate boundaries. Limits expose their powerlessness. A narcissist despises boundaries because boundaries are walls that stop their endless appetite for control. To them, limits feel like rejection, and rejection feels like death. They thrive on intrusion. into your time, your emotions, your finances, your very sense of identity. When you begin to say no, when you draw lines they cannot cross, their carefully constructed illusion of dominance begins to crumble. Boundaries expose what they fear most, that their power is an illusion propped up by your compliance. Without access to your life, their manipulation loses its grip. Boundaries are a declaration that you recognize your worth. They say, "You cannot treat me this way. You cannot take what does not belong to you. You cannot demand what I am not willing to give." A narcissist recoils at this because it denies them their favorite tool, entitlement. They believe they have the right to dictate your schedule, to control your emotions, to shape your worldview. But when you establish limits, you strip them of that imagined authority. Suddenly, they are confronted with a truth they cannot tolerate. You are not theirs to own. At first, their response to boundaries is often explosive. They may mock you, guilt you, accuse you of being cold, selfish, or unloving. They may attempt to bulldoze past your limits, testing to see if your no really means no. This is where resolve matters most. A boundary without enforcement is merely a suggestion, and narcissists thrive on exploiting weakness. The moment you stand firm, the moment you calmly repeat, "This is where I draw the line," they feel the sting of powerlessness. They realize their usual tactics, anger, charm, flattery, or intimidation, no longer work. That realization terrifies them. Boundaries also dismantle their fantasy of control. For a narcissist, every relationship is a stage on which they are the star. But when you set limits, you remind them that your life is not their theater. You are not obligated to clap at their performance, nor are you required to play a supporting role in their script. Boundaries restore the truth. You are an individual with agency, dignity, and freedom. To the narcissist, that independence is offensive because it means their influence is shrinking. Think of boundaries as a spiritual shield. Without them, manipulation becomes infiltration, and soon you are drained, confused, and entangled in battles not your own. But with boundaries, you reclaim space for peace, clarity, and purpose. It is not unkind to say enough. It is an act of strength. Even the most gracious love requires healthy limits, for love without truth becomes enabling. The narcissist will scream at those limits, because they reveal the weakness they spend their lives hiding. Yet the very thing they despise is the very thing that sets you free. Sometimes the most powerful boundary is distance. There are moments when words no longer suffice, when the only effective line is separation. To walk away is not defeat, it is wisdom. The narcissist will view this as betrayal because they cannot imagine a world where they are not at the center of your attention. But walking away sends the loudest message. You do not own me, you do not control me, I choose life beyond your reach. Boundaries are not cruel, they are clarity. They shine a light on the truth that the narcissist is not all-powerful. Their rage at those lines proves it. Their discomfort when they meet resistance proves it. The louder they protest, the more you see how fragile they truly are. And while they may accuse you of shutting them out, what you are really doing is protecting the sacred ground of your soul. For when limits are honored, freedom is restored, and freedom is the one thing the narcissist cannot stand to see you possess. 3. They hate accountability. Truth shatters their illusion. A narcissist thrives in the shadows of deception, where their version of reality can go unchallenged. They weave narratives that exalt themselves, shifting blame onto others while painting themselves as the misunderstood victim or the flawless hero. Accountability is their enemy because it shines the unfiltered light of truth on their carefully constructed illusions. When held responsible, they cannot maintain their mask. Their empire of manipulation is built on lies, and truth is the wrecking ball that brings it all down. This is why they fight so viciously against it. When you call a narcissist to account, you are forcing them to face the very thing they avoid at all costs: responsibility for their actions. They will squirm, deflect, and lash out because the last thing they want is to admit they are wrong. To acknowledge fault would mean to crack the veneer of perfection they present to the world. It would mean acknowledging weakness, and weakness to them is unacceptable. They depend on the illusion of superiority, so accountability feels like a direct assault on their identity. Notice how they react when caught in a lie. Instead of confessing, they double down. They may deny what is obvious, twist the facts, or accuse you of misunderstanding. They will shift the spotlight, making you feel as though you are the problem for even daring to question them. This is gaslighting at its core, distorting reality so that they remain untouchable. But accountability interrupts this cycle. It anchors you in truth and prevents them from rewriting the narrative to suit their pride. The reason accountability is so destructive to them is because it dismantles control. When their lies are exposed, when their excuses are stripped away, they can no longer manipulate the story. They are forced to confront the reality that they are not beyond reproach. This is unbearable to someone who has built their life around appearances. They would rather rage, defame, or walk away than accept responsibility. Yet accountability has a power that cannot be denied, because it does not depend on their agreement. It simply stands as fact. For you, holding a narcissist accountable is not about revenge, it is about freedom. The more you allow them to redefine truth, the more you become entangled in their deception. But when you speak clearly, when you present facts calmly and refuse to bend under pressure, you place a mirror in front of them that they cannot easily avoid. Even if they never admit it, the truth unsettles them. It chips away at their false sense of invincibility. Accountability also reminds them that they are not above the moral order. Narcissists operate as if rules apply to everyone else, but not to them. They believe they are special, untouchable, and exempt. But when confronted with truth, that fantasy collapses. Accountability declares, "You are subject to the same standards as the rest of us." It strips away their imagined crown and places them back on equal ground. They loathe this because equality feels like humiliation to someone addicted to superiority. Do not be surprised if their response is fury. Exposure to truth feels like exposure of their nakedness. Their voice may rise, their words may cut, and their accusations may rain down, all in an effort to regain control of the narrative. But even in their protest, they reveal their weakness. If they were truly strong, truth would not shake them. If they were truly secure, accountability would not threaten them. Their anger is proof that the illusion is fragile. Standing firm in accountability requires courage. It may cost relationships, it may invite slander, but it also safeguards your soul. You are not obligated to accept lies nor to participate in their charade. By insisting on truth, you force them into a corner where their only weapons, deception and charm, fail them. That is why they hate accountability, because in that moment they are stripped of their disguise, and what remains is not the powerful persona they project, but the broken, fearful self they have tried so hard to hide. 4. They hate genuine humility. It reminds them of their emptiness. A narcissist cannot stand humility because humility exposes what they lack. Genuine humility is not weakness, nor is it self-hatred. It is strength clothed in meekness. It is the quiet confidence of someone who does not need applause to validate their worth. To the narcissist, this is intolerable. They measure themselves constantly against others, and their entire identity is propped up by comparison. When they encounter someone who walks in humility, who serves without demanding recognition, who gives without expecting return, it confronts them with the emptiness of their own soul. Humility removes the oxygen from their performance. They are used to environments where people compete for attention, where pride drives behavior and flattery wins influence. But the humble person does not play that game. They are content in the shadows, willing to let others shine, anchored in a peace that cannot be shaken by the absence of applause. This disarms the narcissist, because their strategies only work on those hungry for validation. When they cannot bait you with recognition or manipulate you with praise, they lose their leverage. Your humility is a mirror reflecting their hollowness, and they despise it. Think of how humility responds to insult. While a narcissist would rage, retaliate, and demand vindication, the humble heart can absorb offense without losing identity. This is not weakness, it is freedom. It means you are not controlled by the opinions of others. To the narcissist, such composure is maddening. They want to provoke, to dominate, to watch you react so they feel powerful. But humility refuses to take the bait. Instead, it remains steady, rooted in something deeper than ego. This quiet resilience unsettles them because it reveals the truth. They are slaves to perception, while you are free. Humility also undermines their hierarchy. Narcissists need to be above others, and they construct social ladders where they can stand at the top. Yet humility does not climb those ladders, it knocks them over. The humble person treats the janitor with the same respect as the CEO, the outcast with the same dignity as the celebrated. This terrifies the narcissist because their power relies on maintaining the illusion of superiority. When humility levels the ground, their throne collapses. They cannot comprehend a world where worth is not measured by status, applause, or admiration. Consider also how humility points to truth. The humble heart acknowledges dependence on God, on grace, on something greater than self. Narcissists despise this because they must remain the center. They resist the idea of accountability to anyone higher than themselves. But humility naturally bows to truth and recognizes limits. This reveals their rebellion. Your humility is a silent testimony that greatness is not measured in dominance, but in service, not in applause, but in integrity. That truth cuts against everything they build their lives upon. Do not mistake their hatred of humility as indifference. It is rage born of envy. Deep down, they long for the peace that humility brings, but they cannot grasp it because their pride is too inflated to let go. So when they see someone else walk in quiet strength, they are reminded of the emptiness inside. They lash out, they mock, they belittle, but it is only because they are confronted with the one thing they cannot manufacture, authentic contentment. To embody humility in the presence of a narcissist is one of the greatest acts of resistance. You do not have to match their arrogance with arrogance, nor their pride with pride. You simply stand firm in truth, content in your identity, unshaken by their games. That posture alone is enough to expose their weakness. They hate it because it reminds them of what they will never know as long as they remain trapped in their pride, the deep joy of freedom from self. 5. They hate losing control. Freedom robs them of their grip. Control is the lifeblood of a narcissist. Every conversation, every relationship, every environment they enter becomes, in their mind, a stage to dominate. They want to decide how others feel, how others act, and even how others perceive reality. Their tactics are subtle, sometimes charm, sometimes intimidation, sometimes manipulation, disguised as concern, but the goal is always the same: control. When they sense they are losing it, panic sets in. It is not merely discomfort, it is terror, because their power depends on holding the reins. Freedom, therefore, is their greatest enemy. When someone breaks free from their grip, they lose their audience, their influence, and their false sense of authority. A narcissist hates freedom because it strips them of the ability to define your identity. They want to be the voice that tells you who you are, strong or weak, smart or foolish, worthy or unworthy. When you begin to think for yourself, when you refuse to let their voice override your own discernment, they lose that privilege. To them, this feels like betrayal, even if all you are doing is reclaiming your God-given autonomy. They may accuse you of being rebellious or ungrateful because in their mind, freedom is disobedience. But in reality, it is their control slipping through their fingers. This is why they escalate when they sense independence. The moment you begin to set boundaries, to make decisions without their permission, to walk in confidence apart from their validation, they will intensify their tactics. Some will try guilt, painting themselves as the wounded victim of your so-called coldness. Others will lash out in rage, using fear to herd you back into compliance. Still others will attempt seduction again, flattering you with words of affection to pull you back into their orbit. But all of these responses are desperate attempts to reestablish control. They cannot rest as long as someone they believe belongs to them is walking in freedom. Freedom exposes the fragility of their kingdom. Their entire sense of worth depends on domination, but domination only works if others allow it. When you refuse to play by their rules, you remind them of the truth. Their control was never as strong as they imagined. You hold more power than they ever wanted you to realize. This revelation is unbearable to them. It is easier for them to believe that you are selfish, cruel, or disloyal than to accept that their grip on you has broken. There is also something profoundly spiritual about freedom that unsettles them. Freedom means you are no longer enslaved to manipulation. You are no longer weighed down by fear of their reaction. You can speak the truth without trembling. You can walk away without guilt. That kind of liberty terrifies them because it renders their weapons useless. What can intimidation accomplish against someone who refuses to be intimidated? What can guilt accomplish against someone who no longer accepts false responsibility? Freedom renders their strategies powerless. The irony is that what they fear most, losing control, is precisely what liberates you. For too long, you may have felt trapped in their web, dancing to their tune, shrinking yourself to keep peace. But the moment you realize that peace built on control is not peace at all, you take the first step into freedom. And when you do, their fury will flare, but it will not last forever. Eventually, the narcissist must confront the truth that their grip cannot hold someone who chooses to walk away. To lose control is for them to lose identity, but for you, it is to regain yours. That is why they hate it so much. It is not just about the momentary loss of influence. It is about the unraveling of the very illusion they live by. When you live free, you expose the lie that they are all-powerful. And nothing makes them more miserable than the realization that their empire of control has no hold on a soul that has learned to walk in freedom. 6. They hate irrelevance. Being forgotten is their greatest fear. For a narcissist, irrelevance is the ultimate nightmare. They thrive on being noticed, remembered, and revered. Their existence is built upon the belief that they matter more than others, that their presence should linger in every room long after they've left. They crave legacy, not because they want to give, but because they want to be worshipped. To them, being forgotten is worse than failure. It is annihilation. When people move on, when the world no longer circles around them, their fragile sense of significance collapses. That is why irrelevance makes them miserable. It is the mirror that reveals how small they really are. Narcissists feed on attention like parasites feed on a host. Every glance, every laugh at their joke, every acknowledgement of their supposed wisdom is a deposit into their starving ego. But when those deposits stop, when people stop looking, stop listening, stop caring, the narcissist is left starving. Silence and indifference wound them deeper than criticism ever could. Criticism still means they are being noticed, but to be overlooked, dismissed, or ignored, that cuts to the bone. It reminds them that their power was always dependent on others, never inherent in themselves. Irrelevance strips away their illusion of immortality. Narcissists often fantasize about how they will be remembered, what people will say about them, how their name will live on, how their influence will ripple through time. But when the reality sets in that people forget, that the world moves forward, that their stories fade into the background, it terrifies them. They fight this by exaggerating achievements, rewriting history, or demanding loyalty long after their presence should matter. But history itself is a cruel teacher. Time forgets those who cling to self, and only truth endures. This fear of irrelevance is why they sabotage others who shine. When someone else gains attention, the narcissist feels pushed aside, and nothing infuriates them more than being overshadowed. They cannot celebrate another's success because it reminds them that the spotlight can shift. To them, every recognition given to another person feels stolen from them. This is why they compete endlessly, unable to sit in the quiet assurance that their worth is secure. They have none. Their entire identity is borrowed from the attention of others, and when that attention drifts, they crumble. For you, understanding this weakness is empowering. You do not need to fight, argue, or prove yourself. Often, the most powerful statement you can make to a narcissist is to move on, to stop replaying the drama, to stop giving energy to their demands, to stop centering them in your world. Your life continues without them at the center. That reality is their undoing. While they grasp for significance, you quietly build a life that no longer requires their validation. In doing so, you remind them of the truth they cannot bear. They are not indispensable. Irrelevance also exposes the hollowness of their pursuits. They can gather applause, but applause fades. They can gather wealth, but wealth does not immortalize. They can gather influence, but influence shifts with the tide of time. When they realize that none of it guarantees remembrance, they are left with despair. And yet, this despair points to the deeper issue. They have rejected the only source of lasting significance. True legacy is not found in dominance, but in love, not in control, but in service, not in being admired, but in being authentic. The narcissist cannot see this, and so irrelevance terrifies them. They fight to be remembered, even as the very fight ensures they will be forgotten. For in the end, people do not remember those who demanded the spotlight. They remember those who gave light to others. That is the irony that makes a narcissist miserable. The more they grasp at relevance, the faster it slips away. And the moment they are forgotten, the empire of their pride collapses into dust.